The market was loud. Alien voices filled the air. Some shouted, some laughed, some argued about prices. Strange lights flashed above, showing the next items to be sold. This was not a market for food or tools or machines. This was a slave market. And tonight one human was watching. At the center of the hall, a raised podium stood under a circle of white light. A girl was brought forward, her wrists locked in heavy chains. She was thin, her clothes torn, her eyes empty. She had been here too long. The aliens called her Lot 47. To them, she was not a person. She was property. The crowd hissed and whispered. Tall reptilian creatures clicked their jaws. Small insect-like traders rubbed their claws together. Others shook their heads, already bored. She looks weak. Not even worth half the credits. She will not survive long. The girl stood still. She did not speak. She did not cry. She had learned long ago that hope was dangerous. The auction master, a fat alien with 6 hands, raised his voice.
Lot 47.
Podium slave, trained for display, still breathing. Opening bid, 200 credits. The crowd laughed. No one answered. 200 credits was too high for someone so broken. 100 then, the auction master snapped. His many eyes searched the crowd. Still silence. The girl kept her head down. She had been through this before. Sometimes no one bought her. Then she would be dragged back into the dark cells, waiting for the next market. Waiting for another day in chains. The master's voice grew angry. 50 credits. A low murmur ran through the hall. 50 credits was nothing, even for a human. Some aliens thought about it, but none raised a hand. And then a voice cut through the air. Calm, steady, different. I'll pay 200. The crowd turned. Whispers spread quickly. It was a human voice. Everyone stared at him. A man stood near the back, tall, quiet, wearing a dark coat. His face looked tired, but his eyes were sharp, alive. He did not look afraid of the aliens around him. He looked like someone who had already seen too much. The auction master froze, then smiled wide. Human buyer. 200 credits accepted. Any higher offers? But the hall stayed silent. No alien wanted to challenge this strange human. The hammer fell. Sold! The girl's chains rattled as guards pushed her forward. For the first time in years, she looked up, and she saw him. The human who had bought her. Her mind filled with questions. Why would a human waste money on her? Humans were rare in this part of the galaxy. Weak, poor, unwelcome. They usually kept their heads down to survive. Yet this one had just spent 200 credits on nothing. On her, the human gave his name, short and simple, but she barely heard it. She was still in shock. He didn't smile, he didn't speak much. He only nodded to the guards and took the chain from their hands. The crowd muttered, "Foolish human. She will bring him trouble. He will regret this," but he ignored them. As they walked out of the market, the girl kept her eyes on the floor. She was free of the podium, but not free of the chain. She was afraid to believe this would end differently. The cold night air outside hit her skin. She shivered. The human stopped and looked at her. For the first time, his voice softened. "You're safe now. Safe." She almost laughed. How could she be safe? She was still chained. She was still nothing. Yet something in his voice made her pause. It was not the voice of a master. It was the voice of someone who cared. Her heart beat faster. Why would a human in a galaxy that hated humans risk everything for her? The auction lights faded behind them. The girl walked into the unknown, owned by a man she did not understand. Her old life of chains was ending, but something far more dangerous was beginning. Because freedom, she would soon learn, was not simple. And this human was not what he seemed. She thought he bought her like all the others. But his true reason was something no alien could ever guess. The night was cold, but the girl barely felt it. Her wrists still ached from the chains. Every step behind the human felt unreal. She had been sold many times, but this felt different. The man who now held her chain did not look like the others. He did not laugh. He did not drag her. He only walked forward, calm, silent, as if the noise of the slave market had never touched him. The girl tried to study him. His coat was old, patched in places but clean. A long scar ran across his jaw, faded but deep. His hair was dark, his eyes sharp. He looked like someone who had seen war, but his steps were steady, almost peaceful. They reached the docking bay. The lights of many ships glowed against the metal floor. Merchants loaded cargo. Guards shouted orders. Engines roared. The human stopped in front of a small ship, silver and worn but alive. Its surface carried marks of battles, scratches from old fires. It was not pretty, but it was strong. The girl hesitated. She thought he would lock her inside the cargo hold. Instead, he turned and unlocked her chain. The sound of the lock opening made her freeze. "You're free to walk," he said simply. She stared at him, confused. No one had ever said those words to her. Free to walk? Slaves did not walk free. They obeyed. They bowed. They kept their heads down. Yet he looked at her as if waiting for her to decide. Slowly, she stepped forward. She followed him into the ship, her heart racing. Inside, the ship was quiet. The walls hummed with energy. The air smelled like oil and metal, but also something warm, like real food. Not the cold rations she used to eat in the cells. He led her to a small room. A bed, a chair, a table. Nothing more. But to her, it was more than she had seen in years. "You can stay here," he said. His voice was low, almost kind. The girl did not answer. She kept standing, waiting for the hidden command, waiting for the chain to return. Instead, he turned away and left her alone. For the first time in years, she sat on a bed. She touched the sheets. They were rough but clean. She felt her eyes burn, but no tears came. She had forgotten how to cry. Hours passed. The ship's engines roared to life. Through the small window, she saw the stars stretch as they left the market behind. The human returned. He carried a tray of food. He placed it on the table. Bread, stew, and water, real food. He did not eat first like the masters she once knew. He gave it all to her. "Eat," he said. Her hands shook. She took the bread, biting slowly, afraid it would be taken away. But he only sat in the chair, silent, watching the stars outside the window. Finally, she asked, her voice hoarse. "Why?" The human looked at her, puzzled. "Why what?" "Why, buy me?" Her voice cracked. "I am nothing, worthless. Even they didn't want me." For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then he leaned back in his chair. "You're not nothing," he said. "You just forgot who you are." The words struck her harder than chains. No one had ever said such a thing to her. Not since she could remember. She lowered her eyes, confused, frightened. This man was strange, dangerous in a way she did not understand. The next day, alarms echoed through the ship. A warning light flashed red. The girl ran to the doorway. "What is it?" she asked, fear in her voice. The human's face was calm, but his hands moved quickly over the controls. "Raiders," he said. "They want easy prey." Her stomach twisted. She had seen raiders before. They killed, they burned, they stole. She stepped back, her chains rattling softly. The human stood. "Stay here. Don't open the door." She expected him to panic. She expected him to beg for mercy. But instead he grabbed a small weapon from the wall and walked to the airlock with steady steps. She followed, peeking through the doorway. Outside, a larger ship circled them, guns ready. She saw his face in the glow of the warning lights, calm, focused, unafraid. The raiders boarded. Metal rang as the doors burst open. Creatures with armor and claws stormed inside. She gasped. He raised his weapon, and he fought. She watched in shock. Humans were supposed to be weak. That was what the galaxy said. But he was fast, precise. His eyes burned with something she had never seen before. Will. He fought not like a master protecting his property, but like a man protecting a life. Her life. When it was over, the raiders lay on the floor, defeated. The human stood bleeding, but alive. He turned to her, his voice calm. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, still frozen, still staring at him. No one had ever fought for her before. No one had ever bled for her, and in that moment she realized the most dangerous truth of all. This human was not like the others. He did not see her chains. He saw her. She thought he bought her for freedom. But freedom with him might be more dangerous than slavery. The girl sat in silence. The room smelled of smoke and blood. The raiders were gone, their bodies dragged out into the void, but the sound of the fight still echoed in her ears. She had seen violence before, but not like this. Not for her. The human sat across from her, his arm bleeding from a deep cut. He wrapped it with a strip of cloth, his hand steady, his face calm. He did not look at her. He did not ask for thanks. Finally, she spoke. "You could have run. You could have left me." His eyes lifted to hers. "I don't run." The words were simple, but heavy. She looked away, her thoughts turning fast. For years she had believed humans were weak, hunted, despised. But this one was different. His body carried scars. His eyes carried fire. Still, one question burned in her mind.
Why me?
He leaned back in his chair, silent for a long moment. Because no one else would. The answer shook her. It was not what she expected. Not desire. Not profit, just duty, but she did not trust it, not yet. She had learned long ago that every kindness had a price. The ship floated through the stars, quiet again. She wandered its narrow halls, careful, cautious. She touched the walls, the doors, the strange blinking lights. It felt strange to walk without chains pulling at her wrists. But freedom was heavy, heavier than she had imagined. At night, she lay on the bed he had given her. She tried to sleep, but questions haunted her. Who was this man? What did he really want? Why risk his life for her? She remembered the way he had fought. Fierce, relentless, unbroken. He did not fight like a slave owner. He fought like a soldier. The thought unsettled her. The next day, the human worked on repairing the ship. The raiders had left burns on the hull. Sparks flew as he welded metal, his face lit by fire. She stood at the doorway watching. Do you need help? He looked up, surprised. Then he handed her a tool. Hold this. Her hands trembled as she took it. No one had ever asked her for help. She was property, not a partner. Yet he worked beside her as if it was normal. As if she belonged here. For the first time, she felt useful, alive, but peace never lasted. 3 days later, the ship's warning lights flared again. A deep voice filled the air, cold and sharp. This is the Coral Trade Authority. You are carrying stolen property. Surrender the slave or be destroyed. Her blood turned to ice. They had come for her. The human's jaw tightened. He switched on the communicator. She's free now. The voice on the other side laughed. No slave is free. Hand her over. She gripped the wall, her heart racing. She whispered, They'll kill you if you fight. He looked at her, his eyes steady. Then we fight. Her breath caught. Why? Why would he risk himself again? Against ships larger, stronger. But before she could answer, the ship shook. Explosions lit the dark sky. The battle had begun. The girl watched as the human moved with calm precision. He pressed buttons, pulled levers, the ship obeying like a living thing. His hands were quick, his mind sharp. He fired weapons, dodged enemy blasts, each move daring. She stood frozen, but then she saw sparks fly, systems failing. The ship screamed warnings, and something inside her changed. For years she had been nothing but a chained figure on a podium, but now she wanted more. She wanted to live, to fight. She ran to the control panel beside him. Tell me what to do. He looked at her, shocked. Then for the first time he smiled. Brace the shields. Hold the power steady. Her fingers flew across the controls. She didn't understand everything, but she followed his orders. Together they kept the ship alive. Lasers cut across the sky. Explosions rocked the hull. But side by side they fought. At last the enemy ship faltered, its engines failing. It spun into the void, broken. Silence returned. The girl collapsed into the chair, breathing hard. Sweat covered her skin, but her heart beat with fire. The human leaned back, exhausted. His eyes met hers. You saved us! The words stunned her. No one had ever said such a thing. She had never been thanked. For the first time she felt something strange. Not fear, not duty, something warm, something dangerous. That night, as the ship drifted in quiet space, she lay awake. The chains were gone, but her heart felt bound in a new way. This man, this human, had given her food, freedom, and now trust. He had bled for her. He had let her fight beside him, but trust was a weapon. She knew it could cut deep. She whispered to herself in the darkness. What is your price, human? What do you really want? Because freedom, she now understood, always had a cost. She begins to learn his past and realizes his scars hide secrets far older and far more dangerous than her own. The stars outside the window moved in silence. But inside the ship, the girl's thoughts were loud. She could not sleep. She kept seeing him, standing against raiders, fighting against warships, bleeding yet unbroken. He was human. The galaxy said humans were weak, poor, easy to crush, yet this one had protected her again and again. Why? She needed answers. The next morning, she found him in the control room. He was staring at the screen, reading old star maps. His left arm was still wrapped in cloth, the wound from the battle not fully healed. Yet he did not complain. She stepped closer. You should rest, he glanced at her. I've rested enough. Silence stretched between them. She gathered courage. "Who are you, really?" His eyes stayed on the stars. "Just a man trying to survive," she frowned. "No, I saw the way you fight. You are not just a traitor. You're not like the others." He did not answer. Instead, he shut off the screen and stood. "Come with me." He led her through narrow halls deeper into the ship until they reached a hidden room. The door hissed open and she froze. Inside were weapons, blasters, rifles, knives, gear from a dozen battles. Maps filled the walls, marked with red circles. Old flags hung, burned and torn, and at the center a small box glowing faintly blue. She stepped inside slowly, her breath shallow. This was not the room of a simple traitor. This was the room of a soldier. She turned to him, whispering, "You were in the war." His jaw tightened. He looked at the old flag. "I was a soldier once. A long time ago. Before they broke us," her eyes widened. She had heard stories. Humans once fought against the great empires long ago. But the galaxy laughed at those stories, calling them myths. Humans were not warriors, they said. Humans were weak, yet here was proof, standing in front of her. He sat on a metal chair, his eyes distant. "I fought for freedom, for my people. But we lost. They called us rebels, criminals, animals. The galaxy forgot us." She listened in silence. His voice carried no pride, only sorrow. He touched the scar on his jaw. "I was captured once. Chained like you. Sold like you. I know what it feels like to be nothing but a number." Her heart twisted. For years she had believed she was alone in her suffering, but here was someone who understood. Someone who had lived it. "That's why," he said softly, "I couldn't leave you there." Her eyes burned. She looked away quickly, afraid he would see the storm inside her. For the first time she laughed. It was small, weak, but real. "So you bought me, because you saw yourself?" He gave a faint smile. "Maybe, or maybe because I believe chains should be broken, not worn." She shook her head, still smiling through the pain. "You are strange, human." But inside, something warm spread through her chest. The moment did not last. An alarm shrieked through the ship. Red lights flashed. He stood instantly, his face sharp. "They found us." Her blood went cold. "Who?" "The ones who owned you. The ones who don't forgive debts." Through the window she saw them, sleek black ships hunting like predators. Faster, stronger. He grabbed a weapon and handed her another. "Stay behind me." She hesitated, staring at the gun. I've never." "Then learn." His eyes were steady, fierce. "If you want freedom, you fight for it." Her hands trembled as she gripped the weapon. The ship shook as enemy fire struck. Metal screamed. The hunt had begun. They ran through the halls as the enemy boarded. The girl's heart pounded. Memories of the podium returned. Chains, laughter, shame. But this time was different. This time she was not helpless. The human moved like fire, each shot precise, each step fearless. She followed, her finger on the trigger, every breath heavy. An alien raider rushed her. She froze, then pulled the trigger. Light flared, the raider fell. Her chest heaved. Her hands shook. But deep inside, she felt a spark she had not felt in years. Power. The human glanced back at her, his eyes proud. "Good, don't stop." They fought side by side, pushing back against the storm. At last, silence fell. Smoke filled the halls. The enemies lay defeated. The girl dropped the weapon, her body trembling. The human leaned against the wall, blood dripping from a new wound. His breathing was heavy, but his eyes still burned with fire. She rushed to him. "You're hurt." He shook his head. "I've been hurt before." But she tore fabric from her clothes, pressing it to his wound. "Not this time. You saved me. Let me save you." For a long moment he stared at her. Then he let her hands work, and in that moment the chains between them broke a little more. But when the smoke cleared, the girl saw something on the floor. A piece of broken armor marked with a symbol. Her breath caught. She knew that symbol. It belonged to the same empire that had erased her past, the past she could not remember. She looked at the human, her voice shaking. "Why do they want me so badly? Who was I? Before the chains?" He didn't answer. His eyes darkened, and she realized. He knew. The truth about her past is close, but the price of learning it may be fire and war in the stars. The ship drifted in silence, smoke still curling from the last battle. The girl's hands were stained with his blood, though he tried to hide his pain. She stared at the broken piece of armor on the floor. the strange symbol still glowing faintly. Her voice shook. You know what this means, don't you? You know who I was. The human's eyes were hard, unreadable. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he stood, wincing as the wound pulled. You are more than a slave, he said at last. And they fear what you could become if you remember. The words froze her heart. More than a slave? Could that be true? But before she could press him, the ship's alarm screamed again. A new enemy fleet appeared on the radar. Larger, faster, armed with weapons too powerful for them to face. The girl gripped the table. We can't fight them. Not this many. He looked at her, his face calm, almost fierce. We don't run. Not this time. Her chest tightened. He had said those words before, I don't run. She had thought it was pride. Now she saw it was something deeper. A choice. A human choice. The enemy ship spread across the stars like a black net, cutting off every escape. Their voices crackled over the comms, cold and cruel. Return the stolen property. Or burn. Her throat closed. Stolen property. That was all she was to them. But the human's voice thundered back, filled with defiance. She is free. Then the stars exploded. Lasers tore through the void, striking the hull. The ship shook violently, alarm screaming. Metal groaned like a wounded beast. The human gripped the controls, weaving through fire. His eyes burned with focus, his hands steady even as the galaxy tried to crush them. Shields to full, he shouted. The girl stumbled to the panel, her hands flying over buttons. Shields at 70%! Hold them. She bit her lip, forcing the ship to obey, her heart racing faster than the engines. Another blast hit. The walls shook. Sparks rained from the ceiling, but the human only grinned, wild and unbroken. Come on then. Let's see how much fire you can take. Enemy fighters swarmed like insects, circling, spitting fire. The human rolled the ship, twisting, turning, each movement sharp as a blade. The girl clung to the console, fear and wonder mixing inside her. She had never seen anyone move like this. Not a soldier. Not a slave. Not even a human. Something more, he shouted. Weapons online. Take the gunner's chair. She froze. Me? Yes, you now. Her heart pounded as she dropped into the seat. Her hands hovered over the controls. She had never fired a ship's gun. Never fought for anything but survival. Trust yourself, he said. Trust me. The words wrapped around her like armor. She pulled the trigger. Light thundered from the ship's cannons, cutting through the black sky. One enemy fighter exploded into flames, her breath caught. She had done that. She had destroyed them. The human laughed, fierce and alive. Good shot. Her chest swelled. For the first time, she was not just surviving. She was fighting back. The battle raged. Fire in the stars. Enemy after enemy fell, but more came. The girl screamed as another blast shook the ship. We can't hold forever. The human's eyes were sharp, burning. Then we hold until they break. She fired again and again, her hands steady now, her heart blazing. The fear was still there, but behind it something new. Strength. And then at last the enemy flagship appeared. Massive. Black. Its guns glowed with deadly light. The girl's blood froze. We can't fight that. It's too big. He smiled, a scarred, dangerous smile. Big things fall the hardest. The flagship fired. A storm of light. The ship screamed as shields cracked, metal tearing. The girl cried out, "We're finished!" But the human's eyes burned brighter. Not yet. He pushed the ship forward, straight at the flagship, weaving through fire, every move daring, impossible. The girl held her breath. This was madness. This was suicide. But then she saw his face, calm, steady, fearless. And for the first time she believed. "Target the engines!" he shouted. She aimed, her hands shaking. The cannons roared. The flagship shuddered. Again. Again. Until finally, with a sound like the sky breaking, the giant ship's engines exploded. Flames spread, swallowing its black hull. The enemy fleet broke apart, scattering in panic. They had won. The ship drifted in silence, smoke curling, stars glowing. The girl sat back, her body trembling, her eyes wide. She had fought. She had destroyed warships. She was no longer Lot 47. She was someone else. The human leaned back in his chair, blood on his hands, fire in his eyes. Not bad for your first battle. She laughed, breathless, almost crying. Not bad for a slave. He turned to her, his voice soft. You are not a slave. Not anymore. Her heart raced. His words wrapped around her like chains, chains she wanted to keep. But in the silence after victory, she found the courage to ask again. Tell me the truth. Who was I before the chains? The human's face darkened. He reached into his coat, pulling out a small device. A hologram flickered to life. Her face, younger, stronger, wearing the same symbol as the broken armor. Her breath caught. She was not just a slave. She was something else. He looked at her, his eyes steady. You were a leader once. A spark they tried to erase. She learned she was part of a forgotten rebellion, and that her memory holds the key to a future war. The ship drifted in silence, smoke still curling from the last battle. The girl's hands were stained with his blood, though he tried to hide his pain. She stared at the broken piece of armor on the floor, the strange symbol still glowing faintly. Her voice shook. You know what this means, don't you? You know who I was. The human's eyes were hard, unreadable. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he stood, wincing as the wound pulled. You are more than a slave, he said at last, and they fear what you could become if you remember. The words froze her heart. More than a slave? Could that be true? But before she could press him, the ship's alarm screamed again. A new enemy fleet appeared on the radar. Larger, faster, armed with weapons too powerful for them to face. The girl gripped the table. We can't fight them. Not this many. He looked at her, his face calm, almost fierce. We don't run. Not this time. Her chest tightened. He had said those words before, I don't run. She had thought it was pride. Now she saw it was something deeper. A choice. A human choice. The enemy ship spread across the stars like a black net, cutting off every escape. Their voices crackled over the comms, cold and cruel. Return the stolen property. Or burn. Her throat closed. Stolen property. That was all she was to them, but the human's voice thundered back, filled with defiance. She is free. Then the stars exploded. Lasers tore through the void, striking the hull. The ship shook violently, alarm screaming. Metal groaned like a wounded beast. The human gripped the controls, weaving through fire. His eyes burned with focus, his hands steady even as the galaxy tried to crush them. Shields to full, he shouted. The girl stumbled to the panel, her hands flying over buttons. Shields at 70%! Hold them. She bit her lip, forcing the ship to obey, her heart racing faster than the engines. Another blast hit. The walls shook. Sparks rained from the ceiling, but the human only grinned, wild and unbroken. Come on then. Let's see how much fire you can take. Enemy fighters swarmed like insects, circling, spitting fire. The human rolled the ship, twisting, turning, each movement sharp as a blade. The girl clung to the console, fear and wonder mixing inside her. She had never seen anyone move like this. Not a soldier. Not a slave. Not even a human. Something more, he shouted. Weapons online. Take the gunner's chair. She froze. Me? Yes, you now. Her heart pounded as she dropped into the seat. Her hands hovered over the controls. She had never fired a ship's gun. Never fought for anything but survival. Trust yourself, he said. Trust me. The words wrapped around her like armor. She pulled the trigger. Light thundered from the ship's cannons, cutting through the black sky. One enemy fighter exploded into flames, her breath caught. She had done that. She had destroyed them. The human laughed, fierce and alive. Good shot. Her chest swelled. For the first time, she was not just surviving. She was fighting back. The battle raged. Fire in the stars. Enemy after enemy fell, but more came. The girl screamed as another blast shook the ship. We can't hold forever. The human's eyes were sharp, burning. Then we hold until they break. She fired again and again, her hands steady now, her heart blazing. The fear was still there, but behind it something new. Strength. And then at last the enemy flagship appeared. Massive. Black. Its guns glowed with deadly light. The girl's blood froze. We can't fight that. It's too big. He smiled, a scarred, dangerous smile. Big things fall the hardest. The flagship fired. A storm of light. The ship screamed as shields cracked, metal tearing. The girl cried out, "We're finished!" But the human's eyes burned brighter. Not yet. He pushed the ship forward, straight at the flagship, weaving through fire, every move daring, impossible. The girl held her breath. This was madness. This was suicide. But then she saw his face, calm, steady, fearless. And for the first time she believed, "Target the engines." he shouted. She aimed, her hands shaking. The cannons roared. The flagship shuddered. Again. Again. Until finally, with a sound like the sky breaking, the giant ship's engines exploded. Flames spread, swallowing its black hull. The enemy fleet broke apart, scattering in panic. They had won. The ship drifted in silence, smoke curling, stars glowing. The girl sat back, her body trembling, her eyes wide. She had fought. She had destroyed warships. She was no longer Lot 47, she was someone else. The human leaned back in his chair, blood on his hands, fire in his eyes. Not bad for your first battle, she laughed, breathless, almost crying. Not bad for a slave, he turned to her, his voice soft. You are not a slave. Not anymore, her heart raced. His words wrapped around her like chains, chains she wanted to keep. But in the silence after victory, she found the courage to ask again. Tell me the truth. Who was I before the chains? The human's face darkened. He reached into his coat, pulling out a small device. A hologram flickered to life. Her face, younger, stronger, wearing the same symbol as the broken armor. Her breath caught. She was not just a slave. She was something else. He looked at her, his eyes steady. You were a leader once. A spark they tried to erase. She learned she was part of a forgotten rebellion, and that her memory holds the key to a future war. The hologram flickered in the dim light of the cabin. The girl stared at it in silence. The face looking back was her own, but not broken, not empty. Younger, stronger, fire in the eyes. She wore armor marked with the same symbol as the shattered piece on the floor. Her heart pounded. That's me. The human nodded. Yes, before the chains. Before they erased you, her hands shook. She stepped closer to the glowing image, almost afraid to touch it. The girl in the hologram did not look like Lot 47, the slave on the podium. She looked like a leader. Someone who stood tall when others bowed. Her voice cracked. Who was I? He met her eyes. You were part of a rebellion. A spark that scared the Empire. That's why they took you. They didn't just want to chain you. They wanted to break what you stood for. She shook her head, stepping back. No, that can't be true. I would remember. They wiped your memory, he said softly. But they couldn't erase who you are. The words cut deep. She wanted to deny it, to run from it. But inside her chest, something stirred. A whisper, a shadow of memory, fire, screams, a hand reaching for hers, and her own voice shouting words of defiance she could no longer recall. She clutched her head, gasping. I don't want this. The human stepped closer, but not too close. His voice was calm. You already are this, whether you want it or not. The days that followed were heavy. The girl helped repair the ship, but her mind was elsewhere. She felt torn in two. One half wanted to stay in the small room with its simple bed, to eat warm food, to laugh at his strange jokes. The other half burned with questions. Who had she been? Who had she lost? At night she sat by the window staring at the endless stars. They felt different now. Not just lights in the sky. They were places she might have once known. Places she might have once fought for. The human often joined her. Sometimes they spoke. Sometimes they sat in silence. But she noticed the way his eyes lingered on her, as if watching a fire he thought had gone out, but still hoped to see burning again. One evening, while they shared a meal, she asked, Why didn't you tell me sooner? He paused, setting down his cup. Because freedom isn't just cutting chains. It's choosing what to do after. I didn't want to choose for you. She stared at him, her chest tightening. No one had ever given her a choice before. Not in the cells. Not on the podium. And now the choice was heavier than any chain. But peace shattered again. A message came through the ship's comms. Grainy, broken, but real. A voice from somewhere far away. To any who resist, we are still fighting. The rebellion lives. The girl's breath caught. A rebellion, alive. She was not the last. Her hands trembled. They're out there. The human's eyes darkened. Yes, and if they know who you are, they'll come for you. Friend and enemy alike. She looked at him, her voice small. And what do you want me to do? His answer was steady but heavy. Decide, run from it. Or fight. That night she dreamed of fire. Chains breaking. Her own voice shouting, not in fear but in defiance. She woke with sweat on her skin, but also with a strange clarity. She was more than Lot 47. She was more than a chained slave. She was someone who had once stood for something greater. But could she stand again? The next day she found him working on the weapons bay. She held the small hologram in her hands. "I want to know everything," she said. He looked at her, silent for a moment, then nodded. "It won't be easy. Once you remember, there's no going back." "I don't care." Her voice shook, but it was strong. "I'm tired of running from chains, even the ones in my mind." For the first time, his lips curved into a true smile. Not sharp, not fierce, but warm. "Then we'll begin." They sat in the hidden room, the walls lined with old maps and weapons. He activated the device and the hologram expanded. Images flickered. Battles, rallies, her younger self standing on a platform, shouting words of courage to a crowd of slaves. The girl gasped. She saw her own face filled with fire, not fear. She heard her own voice, strong and unbroken. Tears burned her eyes. "That was me." The human nodded. "And it still is." But before the moment could settle, the ship shook violently. Lights flashed red. Another attack. She grabbed the table. "Who is it this time?" The human checked the scanner. His face hardened. "Not raiders. Not traitors. The Empire itself." Her chest tightened. The Empire, the ones who had erased her, chained her, sold her. They were here. She turned to him, fear and fire battling inside her. "If they take me again..." He shook his head, his eyes fierce. "They won't. Not while I'm alive." For the first time, she reached out and grabbed his hand. Her voice trembled, but her grip was strong. "Then we fight. Together." He squeezed her hand once, and the fire in his eyes matched her own. "The Empire has come. To survive, she must choose. Remain the broken girl of the podium or rise again as the leader she once was." The ship rattled like a dying beast. Alarms screamed, lights flashed, and the stars outside burned with enemy fire. The Empire had come, not raiders, not traitors, but the very power that had chained her, erased her, and sold her to the highest bidder. The girl stood in the control room, her chest rising and falling fast. Fear clawed at her throat, but beneath it something else burned, something stronger. The human stood beside her, his face calm, his eyes fierce. "They will not take you," he said. She looked at him, her voice shaking. "You can't fight them all." "Maybe not," he answered, gripping the controls. "But we'll make them bleed before we fall." His words sent fire through her veins. He did not fight because he believed he could always win. He fought because some things were worth fighting for, even if you lost. The enemy ships closed in, black shadows cutting through the stars. Their voices thundered through the comms. "Return the stolen property, human. Return what belongs to us." Her fists clenched. Property. That was what they still saw when they looked at her. She stepped forward, her voice sharp and unbroken. "I do not belong to you." The silence that followed was heavy, almost shocked. Then the Empire's reply came, cruel and cold. "Then you will burn with him." The first barrage hit. The ship screamed, metal tearing. She stumbled, catching herself on the chair. The human's hands moved like lightning, pulling the ship through fire, weaving between death. But they were outnumbered. Too many, too strong. She turned to him, her chest tight. "We can't win like this." He met her eyes, and she saw the truth. He knew. He had always known. "We don't need to win," he said. "We just need to show them you are not broken." Her heart raced. Not broken. The words echoed inside her. She was more than Lot 47. More than a chained girl on a podium. She was the spark they feared, and sparks could start fires. She ran to the weapons bay, her fingers flying over the controls. Cannons roared, tearing through the dark. She shouted, her voice filled with fire. "Come and face me." The Empire's ships swarmed, but her aim was sharp. Fighters exploded one by one, flames blooming against the stars. The human fought beside her, his movements fierce, precise, unbroken. Together they turned the small ship into a storm. But the Empire was relentless. The flagship loomed ahead, massive and black, its guns glowing with deadly light. One hit from that monster would destroy them. The human's jaw tightened. "We hit the heart." "The engines," she nodded, her hands steady now. Together, the flagship fired. The blast tore through space, grazing their hull. Alarms screamed. But they kept moving faster, sharper, daring. "Now," he shouted. She pulled the trigger. The cannons roared. The flagship shuddered. Fire burst from its engines, a cheer rose in her chest. They had struck the heart, but before victory could settle, another blast hit. The ship shook violently. The human was thrown against the wall, blood spilling from his side. She cried out, rushing to him. "No, stay with me." His eyes burned even as his body weakened. "Don't stop. Don't you dare stop now." Tears blurred her vision, but she turned back to the weapons. Her hands shook, but her heart was fire. For him, she whispered. For me. She fired again and again, each shot a scream, each blast a memory breaking free. She saw herself, on stages, leading crowds, shouting against chains. She saw her people beaten but not silent. She saw fire. She saw hope, and then she remembered. She was not Lot 47, she was not property. She was a leader. A fighter. A flame they could not kill. With one final strike, the flagship's core exploded. Light burst across the stars, so bright it blinded. The enemy fleet broke apart, scattered, fleeing into the dark. Silence fell. The battle was over. The girl dropped into the chair, trembling. Her chest burned, her hands bloody, but her heart was alive. She turned to the human. He lay slumped against the wall, weak but still breathing. His eyes opened, faint but steady. You did it, he whispered. No, she said, her voice breaking. She knelt beside him, gripping his hand. We did it. For the first time, tears spilled freely down her face. She pressed her forehead against his, her voice soft, raw. You didn't just buy my freedom. You bought my heart. His lips curved into a faint smile. Then maybe humans aren't as weak as they say. She laughed through her tears, holding him close. No. Humans are the strongest I've ever known. Outside, the stars burned quietly, as if bowing to the fire that still lived inside her. The girl was no longer a chained podium slave. She was no longer Lot 47. She was a leader, a fighter, and now, something even greater. Because one human had reminded her of the truth the galaxy had forgotten. Humans were not special because of their weapons, or their ships, or their power. They were special because of their hearts. Chains can bind the body, but not the human heart. And once it beats for freedom, no empire can silence it.